Welcome to Conversations on Living, an exploration of the undulating and unknowable landscape of the human condition. I'm Chris Brock, and I'll be your guide on today's excursion across the sands of inquiry. Now, there's far more that we don't know about the universe than we do know. Certainly we have a basic understanding of physics, of biology, of mathematics, and the big brains at CERN are working hard exploring the smallest building blocks of existence, from quarks to gluons, bosons and leptons. But beyond the measurable, beyond that tangible knowledge that makes the light come on when we flick the switch and that makes the wheels turn when we get in our cars, is the less tangible. There are near infinite unknowns that we have yet to encounter in our exploration of existence, as well as other things that we are very aware of, that are very real, but which are less easy to quantify. The feelings stirred up by a piece of music, for example, the sense of amazement at a beautiful sunrise, all the things that make us angry, make us happy, fill us with joy, with love, frustration or sadness. These more ethereal, more spiritual facets of human existence are nonetheless just as real as the quantifiable aspects of life, and indeed are undeniably connected to them. Certainly mathematicians, engineers and physicists can build rockets to the moon, but the drive to get there in the first place must surely be recognised as a spiritual endeavour. We can create processes and formulas to make paint and canvas, but creating a work of art is very much a spiritual exercise. Life then is both spiritual and material, and acknowledging this connection, being open to the known and the unknown in a holistic way, whether we fully understand it or not, can lead us to a healthier, more fulfilling and more rewarding life, more aligned with who and what we are and where we factor into the bigger picture. We can give ourselves the tools we need to pay our bills, alongside the presence, openness and imagination we need to find awe, magic and poetry in the waves crashing against the shore and the swaying of the meadow grasses. Kim Forrester is a holistic consultant and the author of the book Infinite Mind, an exploration of psi and the capabilities of the human mind. She works with people who seek to find that connection between their spiritual selves and their place in the world, and in the process realise their potential and get the most from their human experience. She chatted with me about how we can embrace the uncertainty of what we don't know and combine it with what we do know to live a purposeful and happy life. You can find out more about Kim at her site www.kimforrester.net, and that's KIMFORRESTER. And you can also find her on Instagram, where her handle is I am Kim Forrester. All these links will be in the show notes at conversationsonliving.com. And just before we get into our conversation, I want to give a quick shout out to the guys at Headliner. Headliner is the service I use to create audiograms with which I market this podcast. You've seen them, those social media sized graphics with images, audio and waveforms that podcasters like me post to Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. Headline is possibly the easiest and most powerful way to create them. So if you host a podcast, it's definitely worth checking out at headliner.app. And if you want to find out more about my books, about me, my writing, and more episodes of Conversations on Living, just head over to www.conversationsonliving.com, and you can also join the Facebook group where you can discuss some of the ideas we're sharing here today. Just search for Conversations on Living. Now, enough guessing from me, here's my conversation with holistic consultant Kim Forrester. So Kim, thank you for coming on the podcast. You are a holistic well-being consultant and an author, and we're kind of talking about how everything is connected today and about how to really kind of, promote our well-being. It's not just about drinking lots of water and getting lots of exercise, but also nurturing ourselves in kind of spiritual ways, as well as physical and mental ways. What is holistic therapy? How do, tell us a little bit about what it is you do and maybe even how you got into it as well.
Sure. Well, it's a delight to be here with you, Chris, for a start. So thanks for inviting me on.
No, thank you.
And holistic well-being is a term that I sort of coined. Someone else may have also come up with this term, but I coined it for myself because after starting my spiritual journey, for want of a better word, after starting, meditation circles and spiritual development circles and whatnot, and I was terrible at all of that kind of stuff, by the way, in the very beginning. After developing a very, very basic sort of spiritual understanding or a spiritual resonance, I simultaneously came to understand that this wasn't special and it wasn't a unique gift. And, you know, even as my intuition, as my psychic ability, I don't like using that word because of the connotations, but as these sorts of phenomena became more prevalent in my existence, simultaneously, I became more and more embedded in the idea that it wasn't anything special, that it wasn't a gift bestowed on me, that this felt supremely natural. So something drew me to the science, the emerging science that was starting to explain this. And one of the first scientific statistics that I found in my discoveries was this little statistic of 4.6%. And it's actually a cosmological statistic. Cosmologists understand now so our current understanding through cosmology is that we can explain, we can measure, and we have a tangible understanding of energy and matter, right? We're a very, very clever species, and we've come to sort of have a grasp of what energy and matter is and how it works. And then cosmologists weighed the universe and worked out the different, the speed with which the universe is expanding and all those sorts of, fabulous calculations that are well beyond my understanding. And they came to the understanding that we only understand 4.6% of the universe. So all of that energy and that matter that we have this incredible knowledge of, albeit a very evolving knowledge, all of that constitutes 4.6% of the universe. Now, I'm not talking about, how far the universe goes out into space. I'm talking about what constitutes the makeup of the universe. So what we are made of, what emanates from us, what we absorb into us, what is in us and from us and of us.
It's funny because when you said that in your book, 4.6%, I don't know if you can hear my little girl in the background, so apologies for any background noise. But when you said that, I thought that's actually a very generous number. Do we really know as much of as much as that about everything? Because 4.6%, actually, that's quite a lot. Considering what is knowable and what is kind of unknowable and all that kind of thing.
Well, you make a really good point, because that is what we currently understand to be true. Yeah. And that is based on the Big Bang and, the idea that the universe will expand and then it should begin to contract. But I love that you think that that's quite a lot. For me, it just validated the mystery, the 95% of the universe. And it will come to pass, Chris, that 4.6% will either be the foundation upon which other incredible understandings are based and evolve from, or it will come to pass that 4.6% will be based on miscalculations and misunderstanding about the way the universe works, and it will fade away into oblivion. But everything that we're about to discuss today is that same way. Everything we're about to discuss today is based on where we're at empirically, where we are at intellectually, scientifically, and in some cases spiritually, here right now in the 21st century.
So really, we're still discovering, we're still exploring, and that's the whole point. It's an exploration, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I have this wonderful little sort of understanding that I carry around with me through my daily life, and that is that in 200 years' time, and in this age, it'll be in 100 years' time, people are going to look back on the way we behave now. They're going to look back on our beliefs, on our habits, on our behaviors, on our choices, and they are going to go, how old-fashioned and quaint. Right? In 100 years' time, or 200 years' time, certainly, people are going to look back at us now and go, did they really believe that. How funny that they based their entire scientific knowledge on that theory when we now know that that theory was flawed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Same is also true with our spiritual understanding. And I think this is really important. I know that it would ruffle a few feathers for those who are embedded in this, spiritual concepts, that our spiritual understanding also needs to evolve, and our spiritual understandings, as they come closer to our scientific understandings, could do with a bit of tweaking as well.
Yeah, because spirituality, when you say that, it's almost like the S word that nobody wants to talk about. It's almost like I think there are people who embrace it, and people who are explorers of that kind of realm. They like to meditate. They might have a daily practice. There are other people who might be deeply religious, but then there are other people who might be like, oh, hang on a minute, this is a bit woo-woo.
Mm-hmm.
But at the very least, we're all moved by music and by art and by those very kind of intangible feelings that connect us to kind of the magic of existence, if you like. The kind of feeling of awe when you see an amazing sunset, or the kind of how uplifted you might feel if you hear the birds singing on a summer morning, and that kind of thing. So we are all spiritual creatures, and there's that very famous quote, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. But it feels like, if you go into that, it doesn't feel like kind of serious science. It feels like kind of more like play almost, when you talk about that. As a kind of well-being consultant who works in, these connected things, holistic well-being, how important is kind of having an understanding of spirituality for our well-being?
I would say it's vitally important, but I also say that with an understanding and an encouragement that others get to experience life the way that is best for them and the way that they choose. And if you are a hardcore materialist and you want to deal purely with Newtonian physics, and if I can measure it and touch it, then that's fine, with two caveats. First of all, if you do not want to have a spiritual experience that is not already, well, we'll get onto that, but that is not, does not have empirical evidence in the laboratory, understand that you are choosing to limit yourself to about 4.6% of possible experience of, possible interaction with the universe. That's cool, but understand that. Also understand that empirical science is evolving every year. Certainly over the last 40 years, psychic ability and psychic phenomena, things that we have bucketed as being purely spiritual in the past, have been empirically proven as real and ubiquitous over and over and over again, to the point now where you have skeptics. And back in the 90s, the head of the American Psychological Association is quoted as saying, if we are to take psychic ability and hold it to the same level, same standard of empirical science as any other theory, then we have to regard it as true. So if you want to be a materialist, I applaud you. Go live your life that way. Be aware of where that takes you, though, right? Be aware of what that means. For me, spirituality is a term that we use that explains the experience of being human that is not yet explained by empirical science, and or it explains the experience, as you were saying, that experience of awe, the experience of love, the scent of a rose, that you can only learn experientially, that you can't see the chemical composition of a rose and know what it smells like. Yeah. You can't be told the colors of a sunrise and be overtaken with awe and savoring. I think about meditation. So meditation, up until about 30, 40 years ago was regarded as a purely spiritual thing. We had our Buddhist teachers teaching us meditation, and anyone who was not interested in spirituality would not think to delve into that subject because it's got that big S word attached to it. Here we are today, and meditation is encouraged, and it is being condoned, and it is being held up as an incredible practice for greater psychological and emotional well-being. And they now have an understanding of the physiology and the neurology behind meditation. So spirituality, it was a spiritual concept until it became a scientific one. And I think a lot of what we term science at one point was a spiritual concept.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, there are things today that engineers, scientists, physicists are doing that, 200 years ago, they probably would have gotten burned at the stake, but as being kind of wizards and witches and things like that. But I personally have seen that connection between, and doctors recognize the connection between emotional stress and physical illness. And I've had mystery illnesses when I've been going through stressful periods. And people get migraines when they're stressed out. And, there is a connection between the physiological reality and the emotional, spiritual well-being. And often I think a lot of that kind of stress comes from living in a world that is very much kind of, to a degree, incompatible with our, animal spiritual selves. There's that famous quote by Jiddu Krishnamurti, it's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. And here we all are, kind of living 9 to 5 and wearing our suits and ties, and you're just seeing with the kind of COVID outbreak, there's something not right about our relationship with the natural world. It's become very distorted and artificial. And I suppose with holistic therapy, you're looking to kind of get that balance, redress that balance a little bit, and kind of say there are unknowable things, and we need to get comfortable with that concept that we can't be certain about everything. And in that uncertainty is magic,
Absolutely. The words "I don't know" are really, really powerful, I think, for any of us seeking the truth, or any of us trying to even glimpse the truth, any of us trying to glimpse a sense of true fulfillment, well-being, contentment. We have to understand that sometimes, a lot of the times, we won't fully understand, we won't fully know, and yet we can experience it anyway. People were experiencing gravity long before an apple fell down, during another pandemic on Newton's head. So we are experiencing things if we can open our mind to our experience and just come back to allowing and accepting our experience, whether that's an unpleasant experience, an unhealthy experience, or a really uplifting, inspiring experience. We don't have to. I think it's wise for us to come back to going, okay, early science was the observation of nature, and then the attempt to explain what was seen. It would be wise for us to come back to that, I think. Yeah. I observe that when I am stressed, I get a mystery illness. Now, our modern medicine might not understand that connection between mind and body, or mind and emotion. And yet spiritual teachers will talk about the different bodies that we have. We have our physical body and our emotional body and our karmic body and our, our auric body. So there are clues out there embedded in spirituality about what's actually going on.
And I was just going to say, it's been explored for thousands of years, really, hasn't it? By the yogis and the, it's in the sutras and all of this kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's like coming home almost to a greater wisdom.
Indeed, I was going to say that coming home statement it's truly resonant, because we have to remember and understand that for millennia, our scientists were our spiritual leaders. right? Our astrologers were our astronomers. Pythagoras is the father of modern mathematics, and he is also the father of numerology. He understood that the universe seems to work in a mathematical code. And then, and then we've got pi and we've got phi, the golden ratio, through which all of nature expresses itself. So it was an unfortunate outcome of Newton's science that we got turned into machines. And I think it's something that is profoundly inherent in the way that we view ourselves and medicine and society and psychology, this misunderstanding that we are actually just machinery. We don't realize how far we have sort of allowed that to be embedded in the way we view ourselves in the world. But literally, in the scientific renaissance, in the awakening, they were talking about the universe as being a big clock with clockwork like, machinery and cogs. We were nothing but machines, and we had a certain number of heartbeats to our life. So for goodness sake, don't stress yourself out, and the brain, once it was set, it was set in stone and you couldn't rewire it. Well, we know that to be incorrect now as well because of neuroplasticity. So one of the wisest things I think we can do is A, realize we don't know, and B, come home, like you were saying, to that understanding that we are natural beings. We arise out of the earth. We are made of 8 main elements that are from the earth that we abide upon, that we live on. We are natural beings with natural inclinations, with natural abilities, with natural rhythms. And in there, including, the ability to heal ourselves. It's a very natural ability, including these psychic abilities that we accept in ants and we accept in starlings and we accept in wolves, but don't necessarily accept within ourselves. I'm rambling. There's much. There's just there's so much to go into here.
It's really interesting because you talk about, you don't like necessarily to use the word spirituality because it has all these kind of connotations of kind of fortune tellers and all this kind of stuff. So you use the word psi. I get the impression there's a big Greek influence in your life because you have the Eudaimonia podcast, which is also a Greek word meaning kind of happiness or kind of well-being. And then psi means of the soul, doesn't it? Of the spirit.
It does. But I can't claim that word. That is a word that researchers use.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's the scientific crossover.
Yeah. It is indeed.
But it's amazing, isn't it? There seems to be this there is a common thread in a lot of the conversations I have. And a lot of it comes back to, it reminds me of a quote by Thich Nhat Hanh. And I can't remember it word for word, but he said, we think it's a miracle to walk on water or to fly in the air, but actually the miracle every day is walking on the earth and just, feeling the ground beneath our feet, and just we're surrounded by miracles in every minute of every day, but we're so busy being distracted by all the things that material and measurable and all of this kind of stuff that we've kind of lost our sense of the magic of life a little bit, I think.
It's been interesting for me recently. I've started studying positive psychology, and I have been astounded with the crossover between the work that I was already doing, just taking science and spiritual philosophy and blending those two together. And then I step into positive psychology and go, oh, hello, we're speaking the same language here. Yeah. And one of the main things is that I think we've taken the magic out of life. We've taken the magic out of life. We have externalized our happiness and our well-being. So, everything that we think is going to make us feel grander about ourselves, happier, more fulfilled. Isn't that what we're all after, right? Safer, happier, more fulfilled. We've bought into an idea that all comes from outside of ourselves. Oh, okay, well, I have to definitely get that PhD, and I have to, work in that particular corporation, and I have to earn that amount of money, and perhaps be friends with those particular people, because then I will find whatever it is that I'm searching for. And I don't care how materialistic you choose to be in the way that you approach your life in the world, or how rational and logical you believe yourself to be. Inside every single one of us, there is a pilot light of yearning. There is a calling for us to fulfill ourselves at the deepest core of ourselves. What our spiritual teachers have been telling us for eons, and what positive psychology has been telling us since the turn of the millennia, is that our greatest contentment and happiness and fulfillment, everything we're looking for, actually comes back to how we are, who we are being, and how we are being in the world on the inside.
That's amazing. I had that same conversation with Tom Cronin, and he said, we approach life as if there's this kind of empty hole that needs to be filled by external things, but we have everything we need inside us to fill that already. Happiness is an inside job. That's what they always say, isn't it? And when you work on that and you fill that hole, well, you're already kind of filling that sense of lack and that hole. You realize you don't need anything, so you're in a position to then share that light in a way. You no longer need to absorb something from the outside world to fill that gap. So now you're in a position to kind of radiate, if you like, and to reach fulfillment, to do the work you came here to do, in a way, to be who you came here to be. And that's what I think is really quite fascinating. Who are we? Is it almost like Maslow's hierarchy of needs? When we realize that we've ticked off these boxes of kind of self-actualization, we are then in a kind of position of great empowerment to go on and do something miraculous with that. Whether that's to live a really fulfilled life ourselves, or to kind of transform the world, or whatever it might be, help people, whatever it might be. We're suddenly no longer seeking something, but we're able to share something instead.
That comes back to eudaimonia. So
yeah.
Aristotle presented this idea of a eudemonic life rather than a hedonic life. Hedonism was at one of its peaks in ancient Greece in the time of Aristotle, and people felt that a good life was to eliminate pain and to increase pleasure as much as possible. And in modern society, we might see a parallel in terms of eliminate pain and challenge, right? For ourselves, for our children, don't let any discomfort come into our lives, and increase our status, increase our financial well-being. Aristotle suggested that we kind of had it a bit wrong, and that a good life comes from being a good human being. And I'm not going to say it doesn't matter how much money you have, because it does, and science shows us that there is a baseline level of income, of financial support, that we each need to attain, and perhaps can compel and encourage others or lift others to attain, before we can reach any sense of, let's start looking at, being happy and content. But science shows that once we have reached that basic level in our capitalist world, once we've reached that basic level of financial support, and we are now able to buy our way out of stress, we are now able to buy our way into health and into a sense of autonomy and freedom with our time. We're not having to work 3 jobs a day, right? Which all increases our stress. But once we're comfortable, and it's quite a low standard. I'm not talking about someone with 3 holiday homes and a yacht in the Bahamas. It's $75,000 is what one study showed a year. The only way that we increase our happiness, that we increase our sense of well-being, we increase our sense of contribution, of meaning, of purpose, of savoring of life, is actually by tapping in and utilizing what have been spiritual concepts: kindness, altruism, generosity of spirit, gratitude, mindfulness, awe. And science is now showing that if we want to live a truly good life, not a successful life, not a financially abundant life, if we want to get to the end and have lived a good life and feel like we have contributed in some way in the 80, 90 years that we've had on the planet, then it comes back to this holistic well-being. It comes back to fulfilling, nourishing, and expressing the core of our humanness.
Do you think it can work the other way around? Do you think that if you don't have that kind of material baseline, the financial support, the access to healthcare, the healthy lifestyle that can be quite expensive, and you are working 2 or 3 jobs in order to make ends meet, do you think that it can work the other way around, so you can start to embrace a kind of a life of gratitude, a life of awe, a kind of spiritual practice, if you like, and then that can have an outward impact on your material well-being?
I tread very carefully here. There is no way. The law of attraction thing is something that I don't delve into too deeply, because I feel like it can be very, very judgmental, right? It can leave people who are struggling feeling that they are wrong somehow, and that just doesn't seem to resonate well with me.
Like they're not being grateful enough or something like that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, if you just intended something differently, then you wouldn't be in the position that you're in. I'm not sure that that's a particularly empathetic way to approach people who are struggling, or who are in those kinds of situations. I do believe on a spiritual level, but also on a psychological level, once again, we have the science to show that if we can become even slightly more positive in our day, spiritual teachers will tell us that we are starting to invite in a different kind of resonance and a different kind of vibration into your life. Yes. So if that is something that resonates with you, hang on to that. That's really great. Also understand, or if you're not into spirituality, understand that psychologically it is shown that if we can embrace a little bit of gratitude, if we can apply learned optimism, Martin Seligman's learned optimism, and start to see possibility in our challenges rather than just delving into the darkness. If we can apply these uplifting, holistic concepts, then psychologically we start to broaden and build. Okay, yeah. So broaden and build is Barbara Fredrickson's concept. And our brain goes out of this really linear, focused fight or flight. I'm stressed, and how am I going to, get dollars to pay the rent? Then all I can see is that I have to go and do a few hours overtime. If we can start to twist that and become a little more positive in the way we view our life in the world, we become more creative, because it's only in those positive emotional states that we actually become really expansive and creative in the way that we think, in the way that we see and perceive the world. So to those people who are struggling at the moment, I say, I celebrate you. What incredible human beings you are. It is not your fault that you are the way you are. It's not that you're putting anything wrong out into the universe. However, if you can find it, a moment a day of learned optimism, of gratitude, of a more positive perspective on the world, you're doing yourself a huge favor spiritually and or psychologically. And you will begin to see solutions that you hadn't considered before.
It's interesting because I went through a kind of journey of my own where it was, someone said, "Oh, you should try gratitude," and it did have a big impact because I was so focused on everything that was going wrong,
Mm.
but gratitude helped me to identify everything that was going right. And it was, even if it was just that first cup of coffee in the morning, it's like, well, actually, my day hasn't got off to a terrible start. I've had a great cup of coffee this morning, and it's just suddenly, it's a bit like uh, I don't know. I used to live in New York. There was a terrible cockroach problem in the summer, and cockroaches are funny things because you don't see them until you see one. And then as soon as you see one, suddenly you look around and they're everywhere. And gratitude's a bit like that. It's probably not a great
Mhm.
analogy, but as soon as you start to see kind of one thing that's going right, you kind of say, well, I've had a great cup of coffee this morning. And then you say, well, and I have a clean pair of socks just waiting for me in the drawer. Well, that's good because I don't need to go rummaging around in my laundry bin or whatever for, a clean pair of socks. And oh, and look, the sun's shining, and suddenly you're starting to see things everywhere, and you're kind of reprogramming those neural pathways in a way to tune into a more positive outlook. But there was also something that resonated with me. I don't know if you know about the writer James Baldwin, but he has this very famous quote, and he said, "Not everything. What is it? It's facing things doesn't necessarily change them, but nothing can be changed until it's faced." And I, there's so many things we hide away from because it's too painful. And for me, that was my
Mm.
finances. Um, and then I kind of said, well, no, I'm gonna face up to these things that I've been too, afraid to face. And I suddenly kind of I faced up to my finances. I saw how bad they were, and with that kind of approach, I was able to start turning things around. So this kind of spiritual approach to being more confident, being more positive, started to have an impact on my actual real world results.
Mm.
I didn't kind of wish into reality a Lamborghini or anything like that, but I was able to sort of start managing my finances and those kind of things. And there was a sense that being aware is a state where, when you're aware of what's going on inside you, you can start to make the changes that kind of will transform your world a little bit. I think that Han said the way out is in. And certainly, if you go around with a smile on your face from time to time, people will smile back at you. That's one of the things that I always, think about. The world becomes a much more friendly place when you go into it with a much more friendly attitude. And, it's a healthier way to be and all that kind of stuff. Um, but this sense of awareness as well, it's something that I picked up in the first chapter of your book, or in the prologue of your book, when you talk about the story of the girl on the bus in the Philippines.
Mhm.
And she wants to stay on the bus. The bus is stopping at a bus station, and there's a break while people get off to get food and that kind of thing. And I hope you don't mind me. It's a bit of a spoiler, but something inside her says, I can smell durian fruit and I want to get off. I was going to stay here because I don't mind. I can deal with being hungry, but that fruit smells amazing. And she got off the bus, and just as she got off the bus, a bomb went off in the bus station. And had she not got off the bus, that she would have been killed, and it would have been, a terrible tragedy. But she was saved by this kind of part of her saying, "No, get off the bus." And certainly I've had conversations with, sorry, I'm rambling now, but I had a conversation with Martha Beck, and she said, become aware of what you're aware of.
Mm.
Just listen to your intuition, because there's, Ram Dass says the same thing. When we get quiet, it's amazing what we can hear. And, as well as the birds around us and the sounds that are going on in the street, we can also hear something that's going on in here, and we can notice what we're noticing. And that might be a psychic ability, but it might just be a kind of more a practical kind of sense of intuition and that kind of thing. And that's
Mm.
I find that really fascinating. What are your thoughts on kind of listening to your intuition and looking for the signs that you pick up on and that sort of thing?
I think it's imperative. If I was to talk about the changes that have happened in my life, and I haven't had a situation where it's led me away from, a bomb blast, but I've certainly had numerous occasions where the quiet voice within has led me into the right relationships, or away from toxic relationships. And so I have a podcast as well, Eudaimonia, as you mentioned. And my last interview was with a gentleman called Carl Honore, and he is a broadcaster, and he's the voice of the slow movement. And he talks about us just slowing the heck down in the parts of our lives that need to be slowed down and savored. And one of the interesting parts that came out of our conversation was that when we slow down, Chris, we give ourselves space to hear and to become aware of what's going on there. I think that the awareness, the emotions are always there. The little thoughts in the back of our head saying, hey, maybe this would be a great solution to what you're going on, to what's going on, or maybe this is a possibility that you may want to actually be naturally drawn towards. It's all there, but we're skipping over it through life a lot of the time. And that's where our spiritual teachers talk about living unconsciously, literally getting up in the day, going through the day without a conscious acknowledgement of, why am I doing that? How do I feel about that? What other possibilities are out there? Lifting our gaze from the tasks or the to-do list in front of us and turning it inward and say, what's going on? How do I feel about this? There are, I was talking there about, why am I doing this? If you were to ask people why they say bless you to someone who sneezes now, I'm not sure too many people would tell you why. They'll go, because it's manners, it's what you do. No, you say bless you to someone who sneezes because you have just acknowledged that the devil is escaping out of their nose, and you want to protect them from being damned to hell. Before the pandemic, obviously the handshake was prevalent. You reach out a hand because it is culturally appropriate to do so, not in the part of the world I live in, but in many Western societies. No, what you're saying is, I am passing you on a road back in medieval times, and I may be a knight with a jousting stick, or I have a sword, but I'm going to lay that aside and use my right hand, which was generally used as the sword hand, to reach out to you and say, I come in peace. But we're blowing out the candles on a birthday cake. You're sending your wish up to the goddess and the moon. Those are just a few examples of the things that we do unconsciously and automatically in life. And I'm talking about all sorts of things that we do in that. Getting up and going to that job, studying for that particular course, getting a mortgage up to our eyeballs so that we can go and live in that part of town because it's got the good schools for when our kids happen to be in high school age. These are things that we feel compelled to do without awareness. And I know those are very sort of material things I'm talking about, but they are indicative of the way that we just skip through life with going, no, wait, what's going on? Why? How am I?
Because I love my quotes. I'm all about the quotes. So I think his name was Guillaume Apollinaire. He said, sometimes we have to stop the quest for happiness to just, be happy for a few minutes, and there is that kind of sense that we've got this chase, we've got this kind of constant striving, but we're kind of addicted to the striving itself, the goal. We've forgotten about what we're trying to reach for. And if we actually stop, we'll find that we have a lot of that already.
Absolutely.
And I did an exercise where I planned out my perfect morning. And, I was always kind of like, well, when I'm rich, when I'm famous, I'll be able to do this. My morning's going to be, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to go for a run, I'm going to have a coffee as I check my, the emails from my publicist and all this kind of stuff. And, be in my big house, in my big kitchen. And I thought to myself, well, hang on a minute, a lot of this stuff I can do right now. I don't need to be rich and famous. Okay, I can't have the big house and the big kitchen yet, but I can go for that run. I can start to become that person that I see in that kind of vision, if you like. But it requires a sense of kind of awareness of where I am right now, and an awareness of what's possible, and what is achievable. But also this sense of listening. I mean, Martha Beck calls it her spirit mule, like it's this kind of creature that is sending her signals, but it's her intuition. And there's a story I always tell on the podcast about when I was on the train. I was commuting back from the office, and I was writing a blog post about fear. And I was looking for something. I was a bit stuck, and I needed to find something to progress the article. And I looked out of the window, and there in neon letters was the word courage. And it was above a pub, because the Courage is a brewery in the UK. But there was the answer I was looking for, and my kind of intuition had picked up on that. And we get messages all the time. Religious people say, "I've had a message from God," or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But how much of it is coming from within? How much of these kind of voices guiding us, these angels, if you like, are actually our own kind of deeper wisdom?
Well, see, that's the thing. I think as we evolve as a species, and our scientific understanding goes on, I said, I believe our spiritual understandings have to move on as well. There are theories out there now about what psychic information is. It's been proven to exist, and now they're starting to theorize as to how. The understanding from a physicist point of view is that it's pure data, right? This is that we either have some sort of combined consciousness where we're picking up this information, or perhaps it is through the quantum field, but there's less of an understanding that but the quantum field tells us that we are interconnected, that that we are physically, through subatomic particles, we are interconnected. So there's the interconnection part. Anyway, I digress. The information that we're getting is pure data. But because we are humans living with a human brain, and all of our experiences and our heuristics and our biases and everything, the expectations that we have grown into as an individual, it's up to our brain to translate that data into something that we can accept as an individual. So, you were saying, are angels real, or, this gut feeling or whatever. I would say that the information it's absolutely possible for people to get that kind of information. Now, whether you want to attach that to an angelic figure, I would say that when we get down to the nitty-gritty of it, no, it's not going to be a being, an angel, that has brought you that information. I would surmise that it is your brain getting the information and then going, oh, the way that I perceive that to have happened is through an angel, so therefore I'm going to attach an angel to it. And we have to understand too that different cultures have different heuristics and different stories and different legends. The Maori people of New Zealand talk to their ancestors. It's the ancestors that bring them information. It might be in some culture somewhere in the world that it's a little green frog, right? It's a little green frog that talks to you. I would like to see us pay less attention to the mode of messaging, the mode and with an understanding that the way that we think we're receiving the information is something that we've created with our brain.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just focus on the purity of the message itself, and get back to, I have received some information, and now how do I deal with that?
It's really interesting because I have a diploma in Shinrin-yoku, which is the forest bathing, and I love trees, love being in trees and in forests and that kind of thing. And I also meditate, and I like to get quiet. And I went into the woods about a year ago, and I thought, I'm gonna ask the trees a question. I'm gonna get quiet, and I'm gonna speak to the wisdom of the trees, if you like. And so I asked the question, and an answer came back. So a kind of thought popped up into my head. And I know that this is me being quiet and just hearing my own kind of subconscious, if you like, or my own intuition. But it was just very nice to be able to attach it to the trees. And but for all it could have been a spoon. I could have just got quiet, asked a spoon a question. But it's really what I'm doing is I'm tapping into that that kind of, I'm being open, I'm opening myself up to hear and to listen. And I wonder if that is really what we all need, is just to be more open and aware of kind of not where the messages are coming from, but what the messages are,
Absolutely. There was a movie many, many years ago. It had Jodie Foster, and she went up in space in a spaceship, and she met extraterrestrials, but they came to her in the form of her father.
Yeah.
I can't even remember. I don't know.
It was Contact, wasn't it?
I think it was Contact. But these extraterrestrials came to her in the form of her father because they knew that she would feel comfortable and open and safe in that environment. So for those people who do get messages from trees or angels or green frogs, I celebrate that and I say, fabulous, go for it. What we're talking about here, as far as I'm concerned, is information from the most intimate part of ourselves, from the deepest essence of who we are as a human being, and therefore bring it into your existence. Express that in the way that is most resonant with who you are intimately. If it is a tree, enjoy the messages from the trees. If it's angels or if it's an ancestor, enjoy it, savor it. My concern would be, don't then take that and try and place it on someone else, or say this is the only way to be, or you have to, you're not about, Chris, to start a
tree cult,
tree conversation. Exactly. Where you dictate what the rules are to go out and have a message from the tree. But if I can just take us briefly into the realm of dreams, because this is where dreams are really interesting and powerful. Science has shown through sleep and dream studies that over half of spontaneous psychic messages, right, or phenomena. So over half of the occasions where someone spontaneously gets a premonition or information from afar that they couldn't otherwise have had, comes when people are asleep. And that comes as no surprise to researchers, because what we've done is we have quietened our mind, right? Our conscious brain is rebooting. It's out for the count. And so it's when that quiet voice can actually start bubbling up and saying, great, while that noisy one's out of the way, let me give you the information I've been trying to tell you for the last 3.5 weeks, but you've avoided it because of the omelette and the shopping list and the project work. So dreams are a really powerful way for us to start listening to that inner voice, if we can't seem to be able to tune into it during our waking days. There are 3 types of dreams, though. Like, the general dream is just our brain siphoning through all the information of the day or week past, and trying to categorize it and put it away in catalogs in our brain. Those are general dreams. Then I believe we have intuitive dreams, which is still a cognitive process, but that's where you are aware of something in the environment, or you're aware of something in a relationship, or it might be a business partnership, but it's an unconscious awareness that you have not yet become aware of. And they tend to be a little bit more vivid and a bit strange. But then researchers have delved into this idea of dreams, of psychic dreams, and these are the ones that hang on you. Now, in my book, there are a couple of dreams actually in my book. One which was a bit of a premonition, and another one where a gentleman dreamt of the lottery numbers.
Oh, right.
So,
wow.
Yeah. Incredible story. He didn't just dream of the lottery numbers. He then went back and saved an entire community with the money that he won. So just a phenomenal story. But when I was researching the science behind that particular story, I discovered that apparently it's quite a common thing for people to contact the Lottery Commission, and say, yeah, I dreamt of the numbers. There was a woman in Florida who had a 28-day winning streak on the daily lottery numbers.
Wow.
So the pick 3 or the pick 4, and her father had recently passed, and every night she'd asked for her father to bring her the numbers or something, and every night it would be a different a character in her dream. It was a Buddha figure in one night that gave her the numbers, and then it would be a frog, and then it would be her father. But for 28 days, she actually won the lottery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a few dollars here and a few dollars there, and
yeah, well, up to a few thousand at some points,
wow.
I think. But yeah, but to the point where her work colleagues were saying, "What's tomorrow's numbers, or what's today's?"
That's
numbers?
amazing.
So,
it's almost like we're tapping into a
dream.
kind of an underlying resonance. Martha Beck talks about a kind of a communal conscious space, or unconscious space, called the everywhen. She calls it the everywhen, and you know, there are kind of I think it's in the Philippines where you get the fishermen who can be out at sea in their kind of little canoes miles from land, but they'll know exactly how to navigate back to land. And it's not a conscious thing, but it's a kind of you know, an innate subconscious skill that's been passed down over generations, but they can tap into this kind of shared consciousness, if you like, of the universe, of whatever it is, you know. And you talk about I was going to say, you talk about the kind of the quantum field, and it just makes me think of Tesla, who said, you know, if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration, you know, and we're all part of that vibration one way or another.
Well, absolutely. I mean, hopefully someone, you know, delves further into string theory and we understand this concept of, you know, being made of nothing but vibrating energy. But there are several studies out there that show this unification of consciousness. And when you understand that there is an everyone, right, then it's not so far-fetched to think, well, that's where we're getting the information from. Rupert Sheldrake, he is a gentleman there in the UK, and he, for many decades, has been studying what he calls morphic resonance. And what he has done is he's shown that animals learn a trick, learn experiences, learn knowledge, and upload it to some cloud, right? A database of information that other members of that same species seem to be able to download at will. And I want you to think of your young mum, 3-year-old. I bet you if you put an iPad or a phone in front of your daughter, that she instinctively, intuitively seems to know how to work the buttons. And right. And yet my mother couldn't work out how to use the VCR.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So Rupert Sheldrake, really fascinating studies that he's done show that if you teach a rat a really intricate trick, it'll take that first rat about a month to learn it. This is just an example. You then, after that rat has mastered it, you take 2 other rats somewhere else in the world, you teach them the same trick, it'll take them 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You then, and the more knowledge is ascertained in the brains and the minds of this particular species, the faster other members of that species seem to gain that knowledge and pick it up and use it, to the point where it becomes instinctive and automatic. So that's what you're talking about there, this shared consciousness.
I mean, I know that we talked about when I was studying biology in school, and this is the kind of the limits of my understanding of DNA, but there are some behaviors which get sort of programmed into DNA and passed down over, you know, generations and generations. But this seems much more immediate than that there is a kind of resonant energy that is created and then accessed by, you know, members of the same species almost immediately, you know. And yeah, that's kind of mind-blowing a little bit.
But an extraordinary biological and evolutionary benefit, though, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
If indeed this is what we have had for millennia.
But it's fascinating, and I just want to, because I know we've kind of gone for an hour now, and the rugby is going on, so I won't keep you much longer. But I just want to pick up on something that you've said, and it's just that, you know, a good life is good for you. And by tapping into the scientifically proven health-enhancing power of a profound, holistic human experience, you have an opportunity to enhance your well-being without leaving your home. Do you think we've created a system, a world that we live in, a kind of way of life that is almost designed to stop us doing that? Do you think we've become so distracted from this kind of opening up into ourselves and listening to those deeper intuitive messages and each other, listening to each other, that we've created a system that stops us from doing that almost intentionally.
I'm not sure that we did it on purpose, but we have become machines. And I think, I asked your listeners to reflect on what they do through the day and why.
Yeah.
And I think that we can all see that so much of what we do, it comes down to the point that we either think that we and the universe are machinery. And so therefore, if I pull the right levers at the right time, if I do everything right, everything will fall into place, because that's how machinery works, right? If you plug in the right program, it'll bring out the right, the right outcome for you. That's something I think we've bought into. We've divorced ourselves from our natural selves. And I think that's what you're sort of alluding to there. We talk about going out into nature. Chris, we are nature. We are nature wherever we are. And I think if we can step back into that and truly understand we are natural beings and reconnect with our natural timing and our natural instincts and our natural needs and desires, then I think a lot of what is good for us, inherently flows back, which is why being out in nature is so good for us, right? Because it gets us back to that. So I think those two things are really important for anyone who truly wants to live a good, fulfilling, holistically well-being enhanced life. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's an excellent message to end on. If people want to find out more about your work, your book, and all the things you're talking about, where is a good place for them to start?
KimForrester.net. Don't go to KimForrester.com. She got there ahead of me. Kim Forrester, KimForrester.net. Come join me on Instagram. I'm spending a lot of time and energy and love pouring into my Instagram page at the moment, trying to sort of build a community that's really inspiring and uplifting. So, but you can find me via my website, KimForrester.net.
And on Instagram, I am Kim Forrester, aren't you?
I am Kim Forrester.
Yeah, that's where we met. So that's brilliant.
Indeed.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for that. There's so much to think about. Just kind of almost a sense of being open and aware to who we are and where we are. It can be, such a fulfilling thing, and can open us up to so much more than we experience when we're closed off and focused on our to-do list. So that's brilliant. So thank you ever so much for that. And and I hope you enjoy the rugby and the rest of your day.
Thank you, Chris. I could have spoken to you for hours. It's been such a pleasure.
So there you go. That was the fantastic Kim Forrester. And like I said, you can find out more about Kim at her site, www.kimforrester.net. And also on Instagram, I am Kim Forrester. And also you should try and check out her book. All the links to all of these things are going to be in the show notes at conversationsonliving.com. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. Please, if you did, leave us a review, like it, give us 5 stars if you like. If you didn't like it that much, then maybe just keep that to yourself. And also join the conversation. We are at Conversations on Living. It's a group on Instagram, and you can discuss and share some of the ideas in this conversation. Next week, we are talking with Dr. Patricia Zurita, and we're going to be talking about how fear and perfectionism can get in the way of living a happy and fulfilled life. So remember to subscribe, keep in touch, find us. If you have any feedback, let us know. It's not difficult to find me on Instagram or Twitter or wherever. And until the next time, have a lovely day.